The chill in the Savannah air that November wasn't just from the coming winter. It was a cold draft blowing right through the cracks of Clara's perfect marriage. Inside the Hart estate, the late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the mahogany floors, illuminating dust motes that danced in the silence. Clara stood by the grand foyer table, her hands moving deftly as she arranged a bouquet of rust-colored chrysanthemums and dried wheat, preparing the home for the upcoming Thanksgiving season. She loved this house. She loved the history in its bones. Even if some of the neighbors still looked at her, a black woman standing as the mistress of such a historic property, with veiled curiosity rather than welcome. The heavy oak front door creaked open without a knock. Clara stiffened but didn't turn immediately. Only one person felt entitled enough to walk into the Hart residence uninvited. "Clara, dear," Evelyn's voice floated in, dripping with a sugary sweetness that barely masked the vinegar underneath. "I hope I'm not interrupting." The door was unlocked, which is terribly unsafe, you know. Clara turned, smoothing her silk blouse. Evelyn stood there, impeccable in a beige cashmere coat that cost more than most people's cars, her blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection. She looked Clara up and down, her blue eyes lingering on Clara's natural curls. "Oh," Evelyn said, feigning a polite smile. "You're wearing your hair out today. Brave choice for a Tuesday. It looks so wild, doesn't it? I always wonder how you manage it." "It manages just fine, Evelyn," Clara replied, her voice steady and calm. "Did you need Robert?" "He's still in his study. Actually, I just came to drop off some paperwork for the charity gala." Evelyn breezed past her, placing a folder on the table. "But since I'm here, I might as well say hello to him. We have so much to catch up on." Dinner that evening was an exercise in endurance. Evelyn had invited herself to stay, claiming she hated to dine alone since her divorce. She sat across from Robert, dominating the conversation with memories that predated Clara by 2 decades. "Remember the summer of '98, Rob?" Evelyn laughed, reaching across the table to lightly touch Robert's hand, a touch that lingered a few seconds too long. "We took that trip to the lake house. You were so carefree then. Life was simpler for us, wasn't it? Before all our complications." She glanced briefly at Clara before turning her beaming face back to Robert. Robert smiled, a weak, nostalgic expression softening his tired face. "That was a long time ago, Evie." "Not so long," she purred. The atmosphere in the dining room grew thick. Clara quietly cut her roast chicken, feeling like an intruder in her own marriage. She saw the way Robert looked at Evelyn, with familiarity and ease, and the way he looked at her lately, with exhaustion. Then came the sting. Evelyn took a sip of her wine and set the glass down with a deliberate clink. "Oh, by the way, Clara," Evelyn said casually, "I could have sworn I saw your SUV parked outside that little motel on the edge of town this afternoon. You know, the one near the highway? I was driving past to visit my aunt." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He slowly turned his head toward his wife. "I was at the pharmacy all afternoon, Evelyn," Clara said, meeting Robert's gaze. "You know I volunteer there on Tuesdays." Of course, of course." Evelyn waved a manicured hand dismissively. "It just looked exactly like your car. Same color, same custom rims. But I'm sure there are plenty of cars like that around." "You were at the pharmacy?" Robert asked, his voice tight. It was the first time in months he had openly questioned her schedule. The seed had been planted, and Clara could see the roots of suspicion taking hold in his eyes. "Yes, Robert. I was," Clara answered, but she saw him look away, his appetite gone. The dinner ended awkwardly. As Evelyn stood to leave, she pulled her coat tight, looking satisfied with the wreckage she had left behind at the table. She leaned in close to Clara near the door, the scent of her expensive perfume overpowering the smell of the autumn flowers. As Evelyn leaves, she whispers to Clara with a fake smile, "I'm just looking out for him, sweetie." Someone has to. Wow, the audacity. We all know someone like Evelyn who smiles while holding a knife behind their back, don't we? If you are already rooting for Clara to see through these lies, please drop a number 2 in the comments below to let me know you're right here with us. And if you want to see how a queen fights back, make sure you've joined the Black King family by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. Your support is what keeps these powerful stories alive. Now, let's see just how deep this betrayal really goes. Trust is like a fine china plate. Once you chip it, you can never quite look at it the same way again. For Clara, the hairline fracture that began at dinner had rapidly spread into a web of cracks that threatened to shatter her entire world. 2 days later, the annual charity luncheon was held in the sunlit atrium of the DeSoto Hotel. It was the kind of event where the air conditioning was set too high and the expectations even higher. Clara wore a modest navy dress, trying to blend into the sea of pastels, but Evelyn made sure she stood out for all the wrong reasons. "Everyone, have you met Clara?" Evelyn announced to a circle of wealthy donors, her arm draped possessively around Clara's shoulders. "She's Robert's better half." It really is such a Cinderella story, isn't it? From the struggling side of town to the hard estate. Some people just get all the luck. The women tittered politely, their eyes darting over Clara with judgment. Clara forced a smile, keeping her head high. "It wasn't luck, Evelyn. I worked as a head nurse for 15 years. "Oh, hush now. Don't be so defensive," Evelyn giggled, tapping Clara's nose playfully. She then pulled out her phone to show photos of Robert. When she swiped to a picture of Clara's twins, she paused dramatically. Cute. Although, looking at Robert's baby pictures, genetics are just so mysterious, aren't they? They don't have his nose at all. The implication hung in the air, thick and toxic. Clara excused herself, her hands trembling, feeling the weight of their collective suspicion pressing down on her chest. When she returned home, the sanctuary of her bedroom offered no peace. On her vanity table, sitting conspicuously on top of her jewelry box, was a credit card statement. It wasn't hers. It was a joint account she rarely used. Clara picked it up. Her breath hitched. Highlighted in yellow marker was a charge for the Riverside Motel, the very place Evelyn had mentioned. The date was from last Tuesday. Looking for this? Clara spun around. Robert stood in the doorway, swaying slightly. The smell of bourbon wafted into the room. Evelyn stood just behind him, her face a mask of concern. "Robert, I didn't make this charge," Clara said, her voice shaking. "You know I didn't. Someone put this here." "Stop it, Clara," Robert snapped, stepping into the room. He grabbed the paper from her hand. "Evelyn found it in the mail. She tried to hide it from me to protect you, but I insisted." "Explain it. Were you there?" "I told you. I was at the pharmacy," Clara pleaded, looking to Evelyn for help. "Evelyn, tell him. You know how ridiculous this is." Evelyn stepped forward, placing a soothing hand on Robert's heaving chest. "Oh, Robert, honey, maybe she was just confused? Or maybe it's a mistake. We shouldn't jump to conclusions, even if it looks, well, damning." It was a masterclass in manipulation. Evelyn was defending her in a way that only confirmed Robert's worst fears. As Robert buried his face in his hands, groaning in emotional pain, Clara saw it. Over his slumped shoulder, Evelyn made eye contact with Clara. The concern vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, triumphant smirk. She winked, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement that screamed, "I've got you." Clara realized then that this wasn't just jealousy. It was a calculated execution of her marriage. She looked at Mrs. Potts, the housekeeper who was hovering in the hallway, eyes wide with pity, but helpless to intervene. Robert looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and devoid of the warmth Clara had known for a decade. He looked at Clara with cold eyes and said the words she feared most. "My mother was right about you." Sometimes, the silence in a marriage screams louder than any argument ever could. For the past week, the hard estate had been suffocated by this silence, broken only by the occasional crack of thunder rolling in from the Atlantic. It was a stormy Tuesday night. Clara sat in the leather armchair of Robert's study, waiting. The grandfather clock ticked rhythmically, counting down the seconds until the inevitable explosion. The door burst open. Robert stumbled in, rain dripping from his coat, the stench of scotch preceding him. He didn't look at her, he looked through her. With a guttural growl of frustration, he reached into his briefcase and hurled a thick manila envelope onto the mahogany desk. It slid across the polished surface and stopped right in front of Clara. "Look at them," Robert slurred, his voice thick with pain and alcohol. "Just look at them." Clara opened the envelope. Inside were grainy photographs. They showed a woman who looked exactly like her. Same build, same hairstyle, entering a hotel room with a tall, shadowed man. They were fake, masterful forgeries likely created with digital editing. But to a drunk and paranoid husband, they were the smoking gun. Evelyn gave them to me, Robert said, leaning heavily on the desk, his eyes wild. She hired someone because she didn't want me to be a fool anymore. She loves me enough to tell me the truth. Do you? Clara placed the photos down gently. These are lies, Robert. Fabricated lies. Enough. Robert slammed his hand on the desk. I'm done listening to you. I'm done being the laughingstock of Savannah. I want proof. Scientific proof. He took a ragged breath. I want DNA tests. For all 3 children. Tomorrow. Clara felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. You are questioning the paternity of your own children? Your twins? Your daughter who has your smile? Evelyn has arranged a discreet lab, Robert continued, ignoring her plea. We'll do the swabs tomorrow. If they aren't mine, you leave with nothing. No alimony. No house. Nothing. This was it. The breaking point. Clara looked at the man she had loved for 10 years. She saw the weakness in his jaw, the fear in his eyes. He wasn't leading this family. He was being led by a puppeteer. Instead of crying, a strange calm settled over Clara. Her spine straightened. The fear evaporated, replaced by a steely resolve. Fine, Clara said, her voice deadly quiet. We will do the tests. Robert blinked, surprised by her lack of resistance. You agree? On one condition. Clara stood up, walking slowly toward him. We don't open the results privately. We open them at my birthday party next week. In front of everyone. If I am the liar you say I am, let Evelyn and your mother have the satisfaction of seeing me destroyed publicly. That is what they want, isn't it? Robert hesitated, then nodded slowly, swayed by the drama of it. Fine. At the party. He turned and staggered out of the room, leaving Clara alone in the dim light. Clara waited until his footsteps faded. Then she reached for the rotary phone on the desk. Her fingers dialed a number she hadn't used in years. A number belonging to Mr. Vance, the best private investigator in Georgia, and an old friend of her father. Vance, she said when the line clicked open. It's Clara. I have a job for you. I want you to dig up everything on Evelyn. Her finances, her medical records, her movements for the last year. I don't care how deep you have to go. She listened for a moment, then narrowed her eyes. As thunder rolls outside, Clara whispers into the phone. She wants a war? I'll give her a war. The gloves are finally off. Clara just declared war, and I know you are on the edge of your seat waiting to see her strike back. If you are standing with Clara and ready for the truth to come out, drop a number 8 in the comments below right now to let me know you're still watching. And if you haven't officially joined the Black King family yet, I strongly recommend you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We are building a community here that values strength and justice, and your support helps us keep these powerful stories coming. Now, let's find out what secrets the detective is about to uncover. The quietest person in the room is often the one listening the loudest, and Clara had heard enough. While Robert drowned his guilt in scotch and Evelyn busied herself with destroying a family, Clara moved with the silent precision of a surgeon preparing for a life-saving operation. 3 days before the party, Clara sat in a corner booth at Earl's Diner, a quiet spot on the outskirts of Savannah where the coffee was strong and the patrons minded their own business. Mr. Vance slid into the seat opposite her. He didn't say a word. He simply pushed a thick manila envelope across the scratched laminate table. It's worse than you thought, Clara, Vance said, his voice grave. Much worse. Clara opened the envelope. Her hands didn't tremble this time. She flipped through the documents. First, surveillance photos of Evelyn entering a print shop, timestamped the day before Robert received the motel evidence. Second, a series of bank transfers showing $12 million moved from Robert's company accounts into shell corporations linked to Evelyn. And finally, the piece of paper that made Clara gasp, a copy of Evelyn's medical records. She's 6 months pregnant, Vance whispered. And according to the dates, it happened while you were visiting your mother in the hospital. Clara closed her eyes, absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal. Evelyn wasn't just trying to break up a marriage. She was trying to steal a life. She was paving the way for her own child by erasing Clara's children. When Clara returned to the Hart estate, the house was buzzing with activity. Caterers were setting up tents. Florists were carrying in white lilies. It felt less like a birthday celebration and more like a funeral preparation. Evelyn was in the center of the foyer, barking orders at the staff. "No, no. Move that vase to the left." Evelyn shouted, then turned to see Clara. "Oh, there you are. Try to stay out of the way, sweetie. We want everything perfect for Robert's big announcement. I mean, your birthday." Clara walked past her without a word, ascending the stairs to the master bedroom. She found Robert sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall. This was her final test for him. "Robert," Clara said softly. He looked up, startled. "Do you truly believe in your heart that I would hurt you? That I would lie about our children?" Robert looked at her, then his eyes darted toward the door where Evelyn's voice could be heard downstairs. Fear. Fear of his mother. Fear of the truth. Fear of being wrong. Clouded his judgment. He looked down at his hands. "The test results will speak for themselves, Clara." He muttered cowardice in every syllable. Clara nodded slowly. That was the answer. He was too weak to be saved. He had chosen his side. Now she had to choose hers. 2 nights later, the evening of the party arrived. The house was filled with the murmur of 200 guests. Upstairs, Clara stood in her walk-in closet. She reached past the modest dresses Robert's mother preferred and pulled out a gown she had bought for herself, a stunning emerald green silk that hugged her curves and celebrated her skin tone. She pinned the real DNA results, the ones Vance had obtained legally, to the inside of her clutch. She touched her reflection in the glass, seeing a woman who was no longer a victim. Clara puts on her stunning emerald green dress, looks in the mirror, and wipes away a single tear. "Happy birthday to me," she whispers. 200 guests, 5 tiers of cake, and one lie that was about to collapse under its own weight. The grand ballroom of the Hart estate was suffocatingly warm, filled with the heavy scent of expensive perfume and the hushed whispers of Savannah's elite. They weren't here for the birthday cake. They were here for the spectacle. Evelyn stood at the center of the room, wearing a white gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. She tapped a silver spoon against her champagne flute, the sharp ding-ding-ding cutting through the murmurs. "Attention, everyone." Evelyn beamed, her voice amplified by the microphone. She looped her arm through a sweating, pale Robert's. "We have a very special surprise tonight. A gift of clarity regarding the heritage of the children." She pulled a thick envelope from her clutch. Clara stood a few feet away, perfectly still in her emerald dress, watching the performance with an unreadable expression. Evelyn tore the seal with a dramatic flourish. "The results are in," Evelyn announced, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "Excluded. Robert Hart is excluded as the biological father." The room gasped as one. A collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. Evelyn didn't stop there. With a look of mock devastation, she threw the papers onto the magnificent 5-tier vanilla cake. The frosting smeared, the sugar flowers crushed under the weight of the accusation. "She trapped you, Robert," Evelyn wailed, burying her face in his shoulder, fake tears flowing instantly. "I tried to warn you." The guests began to murmur. "I knew it," a woman whispered loudly near the front. "Those children never looked like him. What can you expect from her kind?" Robert looked at Clara, his face a mask of betrayal and heartbreak. He opened his mouth to scream, to banish her, but then a sound cut through the tension. Clara was laughing. It started soft, then grew louder, echoing off the high ceilings. It wasn't a maniacal laugh. It was the laugh of someone watching a bad play. The room fell into a confused silence. Evelyn lifted her head, her mascara perfectly intact. "You grabbed the wrong envelope, Evelyn." Clara's voice rang out, clear and commanding without a microphone. She nodded to Mrs. Potts by the light switch. The ballroom plunged into darkness. A massive projector screen, intended for a family photo montage, flickered to life behind the ruined cake. "Allow me to fix your mistake," Clara said. Slide 1. A legal DNA document appeared, magnified 10 feet tall. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Robert Hart is the father. The The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Robert stared at the screen, his knees buckling. But wait, Clara continued, her voice icy. There's more. Slide 2. Grainy security footage. It showed Evelyn, clearly recognizable in her designer coat, at a local print shop, handing cash to a clerk and receiving a stack of forged documents. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. Slide 3. A series of bank statements. Transfer to EP Consulting, $12 million. Evelyn's shell company. Slide 4. A medical report. Patient, Evelyn Pierce. Status, pregnant. Estimated conception, June 12th. June 12th, Clara narrated calmly. The week I was in the hospital with my mother. The week you were comforting my husband. Evelyn stood frozen, the white dress now looking like a shroud. The guests were no longer whispering. They were staring in open horror at the woman who had just been exposed as a thief, a liar, and an adulterer. As police sirens wail in the distance, called by Clara beforehand, Clara looks at a stunned Robert and says, "You wanted the truth? You got it." The party was over. The guests had gone, but the echoes of the crash would last a lifetime. The grand ballroom, once filled with music and laughter, was now illuminated only by the harsh, rotating blue and red lights of the police cruisers parked on the gravel driveway outside. 2 officers were escorting Evelyn out of the double doors. The southern bell facade had completely disintegrated. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she didn't cry. She raged. She thrashed against the officers, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "Get your hands off me," she screamed, spitting at the feet of an officer. She turned her venom toward Clara, who stood silently by the stairs. "You think you won? You're nothing. You don't belong in this house. You don't belong with us." The racial slurs that poured from her mouth next were so vile that even the remaining staff turned away in disgust. It was the final proof, if anyone still needed it, of the ugliness that had been rotting beneath her beautiful exterior all along. As the squad car door slammed shut, silencing her hate, a heavy quiet descended upon the estate. Robert was still standing near the ruined cake, looking like a man who had just woken up in a burning house. He looked at the empty space where Evelyn had stood, then at the screen still displaying the truth, and finally at his wife. He fell to his knees. "Clara," he choked out, reaching for the hem of her emerald dress. I didn't know. I was so confused. She manipulated me. Please, you have to understand, I was weak." Clara looked down at him. She didn't feel anger anymore. She didn't even feel sadness. She just felt a profound, quiet pity. She stepped back, out of his reach. "I know you were weak, Robert," she said softly. "That is the problem. You chose suspicion over trust. You chose her word over my life. You let a stranger's prejudice outweigh 10 years of my love." She slowly slid the diamond wedding ring off her finger. It felt heavy, burdened with too many apologies and not enough defense. She placed it on the table next to the champagne flute Evelyn had used for her toast. "My lawyers will be in touch," Clara said. She turned and walked out the front door, past the police cars, into the cool Savannah night. She didn't look back. 3 months later, the morning sun bathed Forsyth Park in a warm, golden light. Clara sat on a bench, watching her twins chase pigeons near the fountain, while her daughter slept in a stroller. She looked different, lighter, younger. The divorce was underway, and with the evidence of Robert's negligence allowing the embezzlement, she was set to receive everything she needed to start over. She had already begun filing paperwork to start a foundation for women who had been silenced by their partners. She took a deep breath of the crisp air. She had lost a husband, yes, but she had found something far more valuable. She stands up, smiles at the sun, and walks forward, leaving the shadows of the past behind her.